One glance. That was all it took. Moments before the royal procession was due to begin, King Charles reportedly paused, stared toward the security line and quietly gave an order no one expected. Minutes later, the joint appearance was gone from the schedule. No explanation. No statement. Just silence. But those inside royal circles insist it wasn't a scheduling issue. It was someone in that crowd. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For weeks, anticipation had been building around what many expected to be one of the most carefully managed public appearances of the season. The schedule had been finalized. Invitations had reportedly gone through multiple rounds of approval. Security protocols had been tightened. Palace timing, known for operating with almost impossible precision, appeared flawless from the outside. Every arrival was measured. Every movement coordinated. Every appearance designed to communicate stability, continuity, and control. And that morning seemed no different. Reports suggest the atmosphere surrounding the event had all the familiar hallmarks of royal discipline. Officials moved with rehearsed confidence. Accredited media had already positioned themselves. Guests had passed through layers of verification. Staff members, according to various accounts circulating among royal observers, expected nothing unusual. Whatever pressures existed behind palace walls, the public schedule appeared untouched. Until something changed. Accounts differ on the exact sequence of events, but several interpretations describe a brief interruption during final preparations. Not loud. Not dramatic. No public confrontation. Just a pause. The kind of pause that becomes noticeable only because institutions like this are designed never to pause at all. It is now whispered in royal commentary circles that during a final review phase near the security checkpoint, King Charles reportedly became aware of someone unexpected among those awaiting clearance. No official confirmation followed. No identity was offered. No explanation emerged. But according to the versions of events that began spreading afterward, the king stopped. Not for long. Long enough. Long enough for aides to reportedly gather closer. Long enough for the rhythm of the event to break. Long enough that people whose jobs depended on keeping schedules invisible suddenly appeared occupied with something no one had prepared for. And then came the instruction. Quiet. Direct. Immediate. The appearance would not proceed. Those present were reportedly told only what they needed to know. Staff redirected movement. Communications shifted. Language became careful. Questions received neutral responses. Publicly, everything remained controlled. Privately, according to speculation now moving through media commentary and palace watch circles, something had triggered an entirely different level of urgency. Because events like this do not disappear casually. Royal appearances are adjusted. Delayed. Reframed. But cancellations, especially late-stage cancellations involving multiple senior figures, invite questions. Questions about logistics. Questions about health. Questions about politics. This time, the questions moved somewhere else. Who had been there? Why had recognition mattered? And perhaps most unsettling of all, why did no one rush to deny the rumors? Observers online began comparing timestamps. Commentators revisited older palace stories. Fragments of speculation multiplied within hours. Some insisted it had been administrative confusion. Others suggested mistaken credentials. A few claimed something more personal had unfolded behind closed doors. Yet amid all the theories, one detail remained strangely consistent. Those reportedly closest to the schedule appeared less surprised by the cancellation than by the reason behind it. As if the possibility had existed. As if certain people had quietly feared something, or someone might eventually appear. And if that possibility had truly been anticipated, then this wasn't a disruption. It was recognition. Which raises a far more unsettling question. But who could appear at a routine security checkpoint and trigger a decision dramatic enough to halt the monarchy's carefully staged machine? Royal events operate with military precision, every invitation traced, every credential verified. Which made this incident impossible to ignore. For most institutions, a cancelled appearance creates inconvenience. For the monarchy, it creates questions. The modern royal system does not rely on spontaneity. It survives through layers of preparation so disciplined that even small adjustments are usually accounted for long before the public notices. Guest lists are reviewed repeatedly. Access categories are separated. Security teams operate through overlapping channels of confirmation. Names become records. Records become approvals. Approvals become movement. By the time someone stands near a royal event, the assumption is simple: they are meant to be there. Which is exactly why this story refused to disappear. As discussion intensified after the cancellation, attention shifted away from schedules and toward procedure. People stopped asking why the event had ended and started asking something far more uncomfortable. How could an unexpected person reach the security line at all? Reports circulating among royal commentators and media observers began focusing on one detail that repeatedly surfaced across different versions of the story: an irregular credential entry. Not an alarm. Not a breach. Something stranger. Accounts differed, but the suggestion remained consistent. At some point during final access review, a credential reportedly appeared that caused uncertainty rather than immediate rejection. That distinction mattered. Because confusion implies recognition. Recognition implies familiarity. And familiarity raises an entirely different set of questions. If the person did not belong there, why wasn't access denied instantly? And if they did belong there, why did their presence reportedly trigger cancellation? Rumors quickly followed. Some interpretations suggested there had been disagreement among palace security teams. Others claimed normal verification procedures appeared to stall unexpectedly. A few Palace Watch narratives even suggested internal checks became unusually quiet once the issue surfaced, as if people were suddenly more interested in containing information than resolving it publicly. Again, no official explanation emerged, but silence inside systems built on protocol rarely goes unnoticed. Observers began revisiting how royal access actually works. Invitations are rarely casual. There are categories: historical relationships, institutional permissions, and long-standing networks that extend beyond public understanding. Not every appearance is managed through simple guest lists. Some names carry historical recognition. Some permissions survive changes in leadership. Some connections remain dormant for years before unexpectedly resurfacing. That possibility opened an entirely new direction. Because increasingly, speculation moved away from strangers and toward history. Was this someone connected to earlier royal circles? Someone known but no longer expected? Someone whose appearance created complications not because they posed a threat, but because they represented a chapter people believed had already been closed? Theories multiplied. Commentators noted how unusual the aftermath felt. Staff reportedly became cautious. Discussions narrowed. Administrative responses appeared restrained. According to recurring speculation, individuals involved with logistics were allegedly discouraged from discussing schedule alterations publicly. Not denied, not corrected. Just left alone. And strangely, that silence did not calm interest. It expanded it. Because the longer nothing was said, the more people wondered whether the cancellation itself had become secondary to something larger, something older. Questions no longer centered on security. They centered on memory. Then insiders began revisiting a forgotten Chapter 1 that may explain why the reaction felt so personal. Royal crises rarely begin in the present. More often, they return from the past. That was the direction the conversation suddenly took. What had started as confusion over a canceled appearance no longer felt like a story about scheduling, credentials, or security procedures. Those questions remained, but they began to feel secondary. Because among royal observers, longtime commentators, and those who spend years studying the patterns of the institution, another possibility emerged. Not that someone unexpected had appeared, but that someone familiar had. And familiarity inside royal history carries a unique kind of weight. The monarchy has always presented itself as continuity made visible. Publicly, it moves forward. Ceremonies continue. Roles evolve. Faces change. Yet behind that structure exists something quieter and often far more complicated, a long memory. One that rarely announces itself but almost never forgets. That is why, as speculation widened, attention drifted toward an older question. What if the reaction wasn't caused by who was standing there, but by what their presence represented? People began revisiting stories that had long disappeared from headlines. Old tensions, complicated relationships, moments that seemed resolved publicly but perhaps never fully settled privately. Not scandals necessarily, something more difficult than scandal. History left unfinished. Because institutions survive by managing conflict, not eliminating it. The royal family, perhaps more than any public institution, has built generations of survival around one principle. Do not confront what can instead be absorbed by time. Differences become distance. Disagreements become silence. Emotional fractures become protocol. Publicly, the machine continues moving, until something interrupts it. And according to the theories now circulating, this moment felt less like interruption and more like return. Commentators began noting that some of the most difficult chapters in royal history were never closed through resolution. They simply stopped being discussed. Relationships cooled. Invitations changed. Roles shifted. People moved to the edge of the institution or disappeared from public association altogether. Yet disappearance and closure are not the same thing. That distinction matters. Because if someone tied to an earlier chapter suddenly reappeared not dramatically, not publicly, but quietly, at the exact point where public ceremony and private access meet, it could explain something numbers and schedules never could. Emotion. And emotion has always been the monarchy's most carefully guarded contradiction. The public image demands steadiness. The private reality demands endurance. That balance becomes harder with time. Because timing changes meaning. A moment that might once have passed quietly can feel entirely different years later. Circumstances evolve. Responsibilities become heavier. Energy becomes more limited. Decisions carry greater consequences. And when a figure stands at the center of an institution while also carrying decades of personal history, even ordinary encounters can begin to feel impossible to separate from everything that came before. Which is why some observers questioned whether this was never truly about access at all. Perhaps recognition triggered memory. Perhaps memory triggered hesitation. Perhaps hesitation triggered a decision no one anticipated. And suddenly the cancellation itself looked different. Not as avoidance, but as a line. Because if protocol had yielded to something personal even briefly, it would suggest something the institution rarely allows itself to admit, that continuity sometimes collides with emotion. And when it does, history has a way of making old questions feel urgent again. But history alone doesn't cancel appearances. Something about this encounter crossed a line. The cancellation itself may reveal more than the explanation ever could. Because once speculation shifted from who appeared to what happened afterward, a different kind of story began to emerge, not one built on identity, but on sequence. The final 30 minutes. Those who follow royal operations often point to one reality that rarely changes. When plans move, they move deliberately. A royal appearance is not simply an event. It is a chain of decisions tied together by timing, personnel, messaging, movement, and expectation. Hundreds of small actions support a public moment that is designed to appear effortless. Which is why what reportedly happened next attracted so much attention. According to circulating interpretations of the timeline, the shift did not happen all at once. First came the interruption, then a pause, then movement. Accounts suggest aides who had been focused outward suddenly redirected inward. Communication patterns reportedly changed. Certain staff members appeared reassigned. Normal pre-event rhythms slowed, not publicly enough to alarm attendees, but internally enough to become noticeable to those accustomed to the pace. No announcement. No explanation. Just adjustment. That adjustment matters because royal schedules are unusually resistant to disruption. Delays happen. Modifications happen. But a late-stage withdrawal, especially one tied to a joint appearance, creates consequences beyond inconvenience. It affects logistics, messaging, press commitments, and internal coordination simultaneously. Which raises another question. What level of concern would justify absorbing that disruption voluntarily? Reports suggest discussions moved quickly behind closed doors. Not debate, not confusion. Decision. And according to several speculative reconstructions now circulating among commentators, once that decision formed, the priority appeared to shift from continuing the event to controlling the aftermath. Containment mode. Public-facing teams reportedly narrowed communication. Language became procedural. Explanations remained minimal. No dramatic statements were issued. No emotional framing introduced. The machine did what it often does under pressure. It reduced visibility. But silence can become its own signal. Observers noticed wording changes. Expectations softened. Coverage became unusually restrained considering the scale of the alteration. And then another detail entered discussion. Reports began suggesting that King Charles himself withdrew unexpectedly from the process. Again, interpretations vary. Some describe it as routine adjustment. Others suggest it carried a more personal tone. But what made the story persist was not withdrawal alone, it was the unanswered question attached to it. Who advised the final decision? Royal decisions rarely belong to one person. Security advises. Private offices coordinate. Communications protect institutional continuity. Senior aides weigh consequences. Yet when moments feel unusually personal, the line between recommendation and choice becomes difficult to see. Did advisors recommend cancellation? Did protocol force caution? Or did someone simply recognize that proceeding would carry consequences no public appearance was worth risking? That uncertainty transformed the entire narrative. Because suddenly people were no longer asking who arrived. They were asking who remained in the room afterward. Who spoke? Who stayed silent? Who accepted the decision immediately? And who didn't? And as attention moved away from gates and schedules, another layer of curiosity quietly began to form. As cameras turned away, attention shifted to the family members who remained behind. Palace statements are controlled. Expressions rarely are. And once the schedules were cleared, the vehicles redirected, and the official explanations reduced to careful language, attention moved somewhere the palace has never fully controlled. People. Not announcements. Not protocols. People. Because institutions can adjust calendars, but they cannot completely manage interpretation. And after the cancellation, observers began doing what they always do during moments of royal uncertainty. They looked at who appeared afterward, who didn't, and what seemed different. The days that followed produced no dramatic declaration and no official acknowledgement that anything unusual had occurred. Public obligations continued. The machine resumed movement. But among those who follow royal appearances closely, discussion turned toward something harder to define: tone. Commentary began focusing not on statements, but on atmosphere. Not what was said, but what wasn't. As always, interpretation varied. Some argued nothing had changed at all. Public life continued. Engagements remained scheduled. Professionalism remained intact. Others weren't convinced. A growing number of royal observers began describing subtle shifts in public presence, not evidence of conflict, not proof of crisis, but something more difficult to dismiss. Shorter exchanges. Measured responses. Moments that felt more restrained than expected. Again, none of it confirmed anything. But royal narratives are often built from accumulation rather than revelation. One appearance means little. Two means coincidence. Three begins to invite interpretation. Commentators started offering competing explanations. One group framed the cancellation as routine caution amplified by public curiosity. They argued the palace had simply done what institutions do under uncertainty: close ranks, minimize noise, move forward. Another interpretation emerged more quietly. What if the cancellation had not solved anything? What if it had only postponed something uncomfortable? That theory gained attention because it aligned with an old pattern familiar to royal history. maintain composure publicly while absorbing pressure privately, and suddenly every appearance afterward seemed to carry extra meaning. Observers debated whether people appeared unusually reserved, whether interactions felt more formal, whether there was effort being spent not on repair, but on stability. None of these interpretations stood as fact, yet they spread. Online conversations accelerated. Timelines filled with comparisons, theories, and competing narratives. Some users dismissed the entire episode as manufactured speculation. Others became convinced that the lack of explanation itself suggested significance. The more people argued, the more the story evolved. Not because new information appeared, because absence creates space. And in that space, people began constructing explanations of their own. Media response reflected the same divide. Some coverage remained restrained, emphasizing procedure and caution against overreading ordinary adjustments. Others leaned into the mystery, not because answers existed, because unanswered questions tend to outlive confirmed ones. And perhaps most interesting of all, the discussion slowly stopped focusing on the supposed appearance itself. People returned to something else. Reaction. Not who arrived, not whether they belonged, but why recognition, if recognition truly happened, would carry enough emotional force to interrupt an institution built to withstand almost everything. That question changed the story. Because once people stopped asking what happened and started asking what it meant, a cancellation became something larger. Then another theory emerged, one that transformed a canceled event into something much larger. By nightfall, people stopped asking whether someone had been seen and started asking why they mattered. That shift changed everything. Until then, the conversation had followed a familiar pattern: identify the disruption, debate the explanation, wait for confirmation. But once no confirmation came, something else happened. The event itself stopped being the center of attention. Meaning took its place. Because mystery inside royal life rarely survives on facts alone. It survives on implication. And so a new wave of theories emerged, not accusations, not conclusions, but competing attempts to explain why a moment that should have been routine appeared to carry so much weight. One theory suggested the simplest possibility, that the reaction had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with symbolism. In institutions built on continuity, symbols matter, presence matters, timing matters. Certain names, relationships, and memories carry meanings that extend beyond ordinary encounters. Under this interpretation, the issue was never who arrived. It was what their arrival represented. Another theory moved in a different direction. Not confrontation, but recognition. The idea that certain chapters inside royal history remain unresolved not because they are active, but because they are protected by silence. Publicly closed, privately unfinished. Supporters of this interpretation argued that the monarchy has long mastered a specific kind of survival, not erasing difficult moments, but placing them behind layers of ceremony, distance, and time. That culture matters. Because discretion inside royal life is rarely presented as secrecy. It is framed as discipline, stability, duty. The institution moves forward not by explaining everything, but by deciding which things become part of public history and which quietly remain private. Most of the time, that system works, until silence becomes noticeable. And according to the theories that continued spreading, that may be what made this moment feel different. People were no longer searching for evidence. They were interpreting absence. Why no correction? Why no visible effort to dismiss speculation? Why did the story seem to fade officially while growing unofficially? Questions multiplied because unanswered moments invite participation. Everyone becomes an investigator. Every gesture becomes evidence. Every ordinary decision begins carrying imagined meaning. That is the strange power of royal mystery. The less that is said, the more people project. Some saw the cancellation as institutional caution. Others saw it as emotional restraint. Some believed the story revealed nothing at all. Others became convinced the silence revealed everything. And perhaps that was always the danger. not exposure, interpretation. Because institutions built around image understand something deeply uncomfortable, certainty creates headlines, but uncertainty creates legends. As the discussion expanded, the unknown figure became almost secondary. Attention moved toward larger ideas: legacy, control, the tension between public continuity and private history, whether moments are managed or merely postponed. And eventually, people stopped debating whether someone truly mattered personally. Instead, they began asking whether their presence had briefly exposed something much larger: the fragile line between maintaining an image and protecting a legacy. At that point, the identity almost no longer mattered, because the mystery had already become bigger than the event. But whether the theory was right almost stopped mattering because the silence became the story. Royal history suggests that sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. By this stage, the discussion had moved beyond names, beyond schedules, beyond whatever may or may not have happened at a checkpoint. Something else had taken over. Silence. Not accidental silence. Not absence caused by confusion. The kind of silence that feels deliberate not because it answers questions, but because it refuses to join them. For observers of royal history, that distinction matters. The monarchy has never operated like ordinary public life. It rarely responds at the speed of public curiosity, because its survival has traditionally depended on something different, resisting the pressure to explain every disruption. The institution does not usually compete for narrative control through constant clarification. More often, it allows time to absorb attention and structure to outlast speculation. That strategy has endured for generations. But it carries a cost. Because every time silence appears where explanation is expected, people begin assigning meaning to the gap. And this time, that gap felt unusually visible. Questions continued to circulate. Why cancel instead of proceed? Why not offer a simple clarification? Why allow interpretation to expand unchecked? Some argued the answer was practical. Royal events are not casual appearances. They involve security planning, institutional coordination, public commitments, and symbolic continuity. Canceling one at the final stage creates disruption that no palace welcomes. Under that interpretation, the fact that cancellation occurred at all suggested caution, not drama. Others saw something more complicated. Because if continuity is normally protected at almost any cost, then interruption becomes meaningful. Not proof, not confirmation, but meaningful. Royal historians often point to a recurring pattern in difficult moments: not confrontation, but containment. Not public debate, but narrowed messaging. Not dramatic correction, but measured withdrawal until attention settles. Sometimes that restraint protects dignity. Sometimes it protects privacy. And sometimes people wonder whether it protects something else entirely. That possibility fueled even more discussion. Public expectation works differently now than it once did. Audiences expect access. They expect explanations. They expect institutions to respond quickly and remove ambiguity. But institutions built on tradition often follow another logic. Speak too early and create a story. Speak too much and expand it. Say nothing and trust the structure to endure. That philosophy can appear disciplined or distant, depending on where you stand, which is why reactions divided so sharply. Some people viewed the silence as evidence that nothing extraordinary had happened. Others believed silence itself had become the statement. The more days passed without explanation, the less people focused on solving the mystery, and the more they focused on what the silence represented. Control, protection, distance, or perhaps simply the old royal instinct that not every moment belongs to public interpretation. Yet even that explanation had limits, because silence can preserve authority, but it can also create fascination. And once fascination takes hold, people begin searching for meaning where certainty never arrived. At some point, the event stopped being remembered for its cancellation. It became remembered for what never followed. No clarification. No closure. No final sentence. Only the lingering feeling that something small had interrupted something enormous. and then disappeared without leaving permission to understand it. And in the end, the unanswered question became impossible to ignore. The event disappeared from the calendar. The conversation did not. And perhaps that is what made this moment feel different from all the others. Not because anyone proved anything, not because hidden documents appeared or dramatic confirmations followed, but because something unusual happened inside an institution built to make unusual things look ordinary, and then the moment vanished before anyone could decide what it meant. Days passed. Schedules resumed. Public life moved forward. Yet the conversation stayed behind, lingering in the space between explanation and silence. Because cancellations are forgotten every year. But unexplained cancellations become stories, and stories become symbols. That may be why this moment captured attention in a way routine adjustments rarely do. People were not reacting to a missing appearance. They were reacting to interruption, to the feeling fairly or unfairly that for a brief instant something human appeared inside something designed to feel permanent. That tension has always lived at the center of monarchy. Institution and individual. Continuity and emotion. Duty and memory. Publicly, the crown represents endurance. It exists beyond personalities, beyond changing relationships, beyond individual moments. That is the promise. But institutions are still carried by people. People remember. People hesitate. People react. And every so often, those private realities seem to surface for a moment, before disappearing again beneath protocol. That possibility may explain why the story continued growing even without new information. Because modern audiences no longer consume royal life as history alone. They interpret it. Every absence becomes narrative. Every adjustment becomes symbolism. Every unexplained decision becomes an invitation. Some people saw the cancellation as a reminder that institutions remain controlled and disciplined. Others interpreted it as proof that no institution, no matter how carefully managed, can completely separate itself from human history. Neither interpretation required certainty, only possibility. And perhaps that was always the reason this moment stayed alive. Not because anyone knew who mattered, but because people recognized the feeling. The feeling that behind official schedules and polished language, there are still moments no statement can fully contain. That legacy itself is complicated. That continuity sometimes asks for silence. And that silence does not always mean nothing happened. As discussions slowly moved on, no final explanation arrived to settle the questions. No defining moment appeared to rewrite the story. The event remained absent. The schedule remained unchanged. Only the meaning remained unsettled. Some will remember this as an overinterpreted cancellation. Others will remember it as one of those strange royal moments that seemed small until people looked closer. And maybe that uncertainty is the point. Because monarchy has never depended entirely on answers. Sometimes it survives through ritual, sometimes through restraint, and sometimes through allowing questions to remain unanswered long enough that they become part of the institution itself. So whether there was recognition, coincidence, caution, or simply timing, the result became the same. The appearance never happened. The conversation never stopped. Because in royal history, the moments that change everything are rarely announced, they're simply removed from the schedule. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.